This video was sponsored by CuriosityStream in partnership with my streaming service Nebula. Hey, happy Friday. This week we talk about the EU proposing some new laws that could potentially change the internet forever. We'll talk about Google and Qualcomm laying the groundworks and the foundations for 4 years of Android updates on flagship phones. And we'll also talk about Facebook saying some silly things in ads. As always, we also have 20 brand new questions in our weekly tech knowledge quiz that is available both in the Crowd app and on the web. So happy quizzing. Links are in the description and welcome to the Friday checkout. Okay, my pick of the week will be the European Union proposing new laws called the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act. And I know as soon as you hear European Union legislation, you're about to fall asleep. I get you. But this is actually quite important and it might change how the internet works forever if they manage to pass it. I'm not going to go through the whole proposal, just my personal highlights, but the first major point in the Digital Services Act would require all digital service providers to be transparent about stuff like why they are showing you a targeted ad or a piece of recommended content. You can kind of do this on Facebook with ads, and sometimes YouTube gives you a hint of why you are seeing a specific video as well, but imagine this being just a requirement everywhere on the internet. Second, the proposal says there should be safeguards for users whose content has been erroneously deleted by platforms. So I guess that means like a legally mandated sort of dispute mechanism everywhere on the internet and the ability to ask for unjustly deleted content to be put back on the internet again. And third, any platform that reaches more than 10% of the EU's population, or 45 million users, will be considered systemic in nature and will be subject to special oversight and stricter regulations. The Digital Markets Act, on the other hand, specifically focuses on so-called digital gatekeepers, or large companies with a tight grip on a specific key market that might misuse their position. It's not yet clearly defined what specifically makes a company a gatekeeper, but the Commission specifically calls out search engines, social networks, or online intermediation services. And these companies will get a special set of rules applied to them to make sure that they are playing fair, including not being allowed to use practices like blocking users from uninstalling any pre-installed software or apps. And most importantly, they will have to ensure that software from third parties can properly function and interoperate with their own services. So those are kind of big and vague statements, and I thought it would be useful if I made up some examples, some concrete examples of what this could potentially mean. Example 1. Facebook could be forced to let anyone build a fully fledged third-party client for WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, and so on. Number 2. Google could be forced to build APIs for Google Drive that lets you transfer your files to another cloud storage app seamlessly if you want to migrate. And example number 3, Microsoft could be banned from artificially blocking certain browsers from accessing Teams just because they're trying to promote Edge. These are obviously just random examples I made up, but the intention is that if a company is a gatekeeper, they would have to open up their data and their services so that their competitors can interact with it and compete with it. The EU has previously passed a so-called Payment Services Directive 2 a few years ago that did something similar to banks, basically forcing banks to allow their customers to give direct access to third-party apps and accounting tools or whatever else they want to use to their bank accounts. This has led to a kind of boom in financial technology startups, and I bet that the EU is hoping for the same to happen here as well. And this is obviously just a proposal, so who knows if it actually passes, and of course many times the intended outcome of legislation isn't the actual outcome of legislation, but still, this is shockingly ambitious, and if it actually passes, it would be the biggest change to the internet since a very, very long time. Having consumers locked in walled gardens is of course core to the business models of all tech giants, so you can expect that they will fight this like hell, and if it passes, I even expect that some of them will at least seriously consider not doing business in Europe anymore. Okay, my win of the week will be Qualcomm and Google coming together to officially give their support for 4 years of updates on Android. And if you didn't know, Android version updates work in the way that phone makers first wait for Qualcomm to update their chip-specific software, then the manufacturers take that and create the final Android version update to the phone. Flagship Qualcomm chips have historically all supported 3 different Android versions, which means that unless the OS maker was willing to tinker around like custom ROM makers do, or like Fairphone does, who sells old hardware and wants to keep it updated for long, that's just how much they could update their phones. And now, through a series of improvements, which are honestly just way too boring to explain here in this video, Qualcomm and Google have brought that number up by an extra year. This specifically means 3 major Android version upgrades plus 1 extra year of security patches should be pretty easy to do for manufacturers. That is of course still not as good as it is on iOS, and of course we'll have to wait and see how well the manufacturers actually implement these updates, but I think with 4 years we're starting to get to a pretty good place. As I recently posted on Twitter, where you should definitely follow me if you haven't already, people everywhere in the world are holding onto their phones for longer and longer. In the US it's already over 3 years, so it makes sense that our phones should get updated for longer too. And my fail of the week will be Facebook running hilarious full-page ads in major newspapers against Apple's new privacy changes in iOS 14. So I've already talked about the new privacy rules in last week's Friday checkout, you can watch that somewhere here, but basically the big change is that apps on iOS will now have to explicitly ask if they can connect your activity inside the app to your activities in other apps or on the web. So your cooking app, for example, will still be able to show you ads for like kitchen stuff and food delivery stuff, for example, but it won't be able to show you an ad for a necklace that you liked 7 weeks ago on Instagram, unless you agree to this tracking. Which of course is terrible for Facebook, but it is pretty undeniably how the internet and phones should work. So then Facebook runs these ads and basically paints Apple as the evil tyrant who wants to kill small businesses and take their revenue away. And as you might expect, basically nobody takes their side. So I think they overall just hurt their own credibility and actually gave Apple's new privacy moves some free promotion while they were at it. And sure, I get Facebook's point. Businesses, including small ones, that rely exclusively on tracking users invasively without asking for their permission, their business model will be hard hit by this. But honestly, maybe it's time to just find better business models anyway. One such better alternative that includes no invasive tracking and no ads of any kind is, of course, Nebula. Nebula is the video streaming platform I've built with a bunch of the internet's most talented educational creators like Real Engineering, Polymatter, Tierzoo, Lowspec Gamer, and more. The next episode of the Story Behind series is already on Nebula since I don't have to wait for sponsor approvals there, unlike on YouTube. It's about the rise and fall of Japanese phone brands, by the way. And most of my TechAltar stuff gets uploaded there a day or 2 earlier, together with all of our regular content, ad-free of course, and a bunch of great Nebula originals, like Real Engineering's incredible series on the logistics of D-Day or Real Life Lore's in-depth exploration of ghost towns. On Nebula, we, the creators, can just focus on making really good content for you instead of having to worry about hitting some mysterious demonetization trigger or pleasing the algorithm, and you can just focus on watching good content instead of being constantly interrupted by ads or getting tracked all the time. Best of all, Nebula comes for free with a subscription to my sponsor CuriosityStream, which itself is 26% off right now, so you get both services for just over $1 a month. CuriosityStream is of course the premier place on the internet for high-quality professional documentaries from the founder of the Discovery Channel, and they have a huge library of science, nature, and history content to binge while you are stuck at home. I've recently finished watching Cyber War on CuriosityStream, which is a documentary on hackers and governments doing nasty things, because that's just the world we're living in right now, and there's tons of other great content here from hosts like David Attenborough, Jane Goodall, Stephen Hawking, and more. So check them out at the link in the description, and I'll see you next week.